You are now listening to You Heard. In today's episode of You Heard, we are joined by Riza Reyes, and we dive into what gender and sex for those who identify as women are expected to look like and be performed as in school, in the workplace, in the households, and in our own respective relationships.
Hey. So on today's episode of You Heard, we have the beautiful, amazing, intelligent Riza Reyes, the baddie from Hell's Kitchen. We have known each other. I stopped counting a really long time ago, but let's just say we essentially spent our young adult lives with each other and are rolling into our 30s together. And I'm super excited to have you on the podcast today, just because I know that you have so much to add to the You Heard community. And I want to give you the floor to introduce the topic, and let's dive in.
Well, that was a better introduction than I could have given myself. That was great. And yes, we are entering our 30s, me much faster than you. But our topic today that I really wanted to talk about was gender roles, obviously from, a female perspective, because we're both females. Honestly, for me, where I can remember is mostly like going to school. Mm-hmm. You don't really think about it too much because when you're growing up, there's just certain expectations. So even going to school, the first day of school, I have a uniform. And, from kindergarten, because I always had to wear a uniform up to a certain point. And the uniform I had to wear was much different than the uniforms the boys got to wear.
Of course.
So, yeah. And I was always one of those kids. I was always athletic. I love sports. So imagine having to wear a uniform with the skirt and stockings.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, I know. I did it most of my life.
I know. That's what I'm saying, because I had to do it too for high school. So I had to do it for elementary and high school. Middle school, I was lucky enough that there was no uniforms. But just even the part where we had to wear a skirt and stockings because we didn't want to tempt the boys to look under our skirts.
Oh, yeah.
So that was always something that bugged me. And then I've always been very athletic, tomboy, and I've always wanted to I'm more comfortable wearing pants. I am not a skirt dress type of girl, nothing like that. So I'm much more comfortable in the jeans and t-shirt and sneakers. Oh, and I couldn't wear sneakers. You had to wear these shoes. But if the boys who wore the sneakers, they can get away with it as long as it was all black. So already we're starting, our life being told that this is how we're supposed to dress.
Right. Like this image of, girls wear skirts and dresses and the pretty shoes. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that it's to entice boys, but to also not distract them at the same time, because you may look like you are in like the Handmaid's Tale, but at the same time, like the way that the dress is cut, the stockings, the shoes, and all of this other stuff is emphasizing, the womanly body and all this, and just even in trying to not create some kind of cycle, they created some kind of cycle. And what's funny is that you went to public school, and like you still had that kind of imagery and idea that was pushed on you. So when I was in public school, I remember getting the papers, like especially once it started getting hot, like no tank tops, no short shorts, no this, no that. And the list was so much longer for girls than it was for guys. And I remember being in public school, and I was always really into fashion. I always I wanted to look cute all the time and stuff. And I was really like mismatchy. Like I wanted to like match everything. My shoes had to perfectly match my pants, perfectly match my shirt, perfectly match, I don't know, some earrings I got from Claire's when I was in elementary school, whatever it was. But there were several times where I guess just the t-shirt that I was wearing or whatever, I guess, not cut low, but eventually it fell kind of low, and like being pulled out of the classroom and being told like, don't wear shirts like that because it's going to distract the boys, especially at this age. Yep. Like, we're in the 4th and 5th grade and hormones and all this other stuff. And of course, at that point in time, I'm not thinking anything about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I'll make sure not to wear this shirt again. Like, fine. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. whatever. Yeah. And then going to Catholic school, oh my God, you had to be a saint. Your skirt better bend down to your toes. You have to look a particular way and stuff. And what's funny is so the high school that I went to, they were open to you wearing makeup. They were open to you like dyeing your hair and having your nails painted and stuff. Of course, it had to be quote unquote tasteful. You know, it had to be natural colors. You couldn't wear too much makeup, and you had to wear like no extensions on your nails or anything like that. But I remember having fire drills and our teachers and the principal being outside with yardsticks and like quarters to measure our earrings, to measure our skirts, to make sure that our uniform was prim and proper. I remember like junior year, we were having like our ring ceremony or whatever, and they told us exactly what we needed to wear, like these knee-high stockings. They had to be white, these particular kind of shoes. We had to sit a particular kind of way, and this like whole image of like what womanhood and how to carry yourself was supposed to be. And like you, I wasn't fucking about it.
Oh yeah. And that's the funny thing, because this is where like, you know, this is where we learn. This is where we start to learn. Like, of course we get taught at home and stuff like that, but we spend a huge chunk of our day, at least the majority part of our day, if we have, you know, a parent who's working, and obviously most of us comes from single mom households.
Right.
And this is where we're basically learning how to be human beings and people and all this stuff. And that's the first thing you teach a child is girls are supposed to act this way and boys are supposed to act this way. You can't do this because it's going to force the boys to do something that they don't want to do. Like that's something that's embedded in you. So
while boys get to be boys,
exactly.
Like, oh, he's mean to you because he likes you. Like, I remember boys straight up bullying me and be like, oh my God, he has a crush on me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's not okay.
Absolutely. And it was just like, but why? Why does he have to be mean to me to like me? Why can't he just be nice? And then that all goes into as we get older and we go into these shitty relationships.
Right. And it's like, oh, okay, you can abuse me because that's how I know you love me.
Exactly.
Like you like calling me all of these names, cheating on me, like whatever it may be, pushing me around, like, no, it's because you love me. And I learned that when I was 8 years old, when this like kid cut my hair because he thought I was cute.
Exactly. And then it's just all over. And then even if we continue to schools, it's with classes, certain subjects that, you know, I guess back in the day now when we were growing up, you know, the home ec was mostly strictly for girls. Or even in gym class, guys can come in and sport the shorts. At least the school I went to, if I wasn't wearing the gym uniform from my school, I would get a sit out for the day.
That's crazy.
Because, you know, I had to wear the long sweats as well. Also, I'm a thicker girl. So my shirts had to be 2 sizes bigger because I couldn't wear anything tight because, you know, my boobs were going to be on display.
Exactly.
It's not a turtleneck, but it covers my neck. like it's a shirt.
Let me go play basketball with this turtleneck real quick.
Exactly. It's like no matter what I wear, I can't help that I developed, you know? So it's like no matter what I'm wearing, my boobs are going to be there.
Problem.
Yeah. And no matter what I wear, I'm going to have to wear like a sports bra, which, as you know, I played basketball. So I lived by sports bras. So how is that my fault that I'm running up and down the court and my boobs go up and down? That's not, I can't.
Yeah. Like
it's been a lot. Us being women.
When isn't it a lot for us?
All of this starts in school. So then when eventually we go into work, you kind of don't notice some of the subtle, because at work, they're more subtle with it because nowadays, I'm glad there's a lot of more laws to protect, at least here in New York, to protect women from stuff like this in the workplace. But even for where I work now, my bosses asked me if I wanted to, you know, if I wanted to get my hair done or can I wear something nice for the front desk?
What?
Yeah. Yeah. And
are you paying for it?
It was one of those things like, oh, you know, if you want to let your hair out or what you want to do and all this stuff, like, can you, you know, what they would say, make yourself presentable. And I would just kind of like look at them like I'm wearing clothes and it's professional.
I am not naked.
I am not naked. My hair is up. You know, it's out of my face. I'm very nice to the patients. But they constantly told me they wanted me to be like my coworker who she's very, let's just say a better word, she's very feminine. So she loves the jewelry. She loves getting her nails done. She loves getting her hair done. It's always up to par. The stuff that she wears is gorgeous, but that's her. So they weren't really understanding in the beginning why, because I'm a girl now. So because I'm a girl, they assume I have to be feminine. Right. So I had to kind of compromise. And the reason why I wear my scrub tops even at the front desk is because I had to compromise with them. I was like, you have a standard uniform here for us. I'll wear the uniform.
Right.
Because you're not going to get that from me. That's just not how it's going to be. Like, if you don't want me to come in t-shirts and jeans, that's fine. You're my employer. But then if anything, I'll just wear the uniform. So it's even stuff like that, because no guy would be asked that of him.
No, absolutely not. See, I in my positions that I've had, I've never really had to deal with that, where someone had like told me like, well, this is what we kind of expect you to wear because you're a woman, or like to be more presentable or anything like that. But in all my positions, I have had to dress professionally, and professionalism is different everywhere you go. And having worked in rather conservative companies or conservative areas, I think there are certain fashion choices that I choose that are very like eclectic and loud and flamboyant that I think a lot of my employers weren't ready for. But that wasn't necessarily assigned to like my gender. But I know a lot of people who have been in your position. Like, for example, bartenders. I have a friend who's a bartender, and like they expect her to dress a particular way that shows off her body, have her nails done all the time, nails done, makeup done all the time, because that's how you make money. That's how you make tips. That's how you keep customers going, because they're not only investing in the drinks and the food, they're also investing in the pretty girls that are behind the bar. So I know that that's definitely a thing. I mean, even if you look at the government and what they kind of come at women wearing for, on the floor, particular colors, particular dresses, particular suits and stuff. And you never see those kinds of arguments going towards men, or even people who are in Hollywood. The women always get the question, who are you wearing? While men are being asked about, the role that they just played in this, Academy Award winning picture. So it's always like women are constantly being watched. You have to emphasize your femininity, but not so much that it's distracting to the male population.
Absolutely. That's actually a great point when you bring out Hollywood and stuff like that, because, men attire is, well, quote unquote, the gender men attire is very simple. It's you wear pants, shoes or sneakers, however you want it, in a t-shirt or a button down. And when you want to dress up or professional, it's a suit. It's very simple. So
it's this or that.
Exactly.
Right.
For us, it's so much gray area. It's so much that we have to do. It's our hair. It's our nails. We can't be too flirty. We can't be too nice. We can't be too mean. We can't be too this. Or if we're stern or this, we're considered a bitch, or we're considered this or that. We're never just us. So that was a good example about Hollywood. I overlooked that, because I used to watch the red carpet and just look at all the pretty dresses and like, oh, I wonder who she's wearing, and never once thought twice about what suit the guy was wearing.
Right, exactly, because it's a plain black suit. They're wearing a white button down and a black bow tie or something, and it's nothing special. And the woman is always done up and done out, and it's not funny, but of course you also bring up hair, and both you and I are curly hair people, and that navigating that in the professional world, like, is my hair considered unruly in this particular area? Like, do men really ever have to deal with that? Like, I definitely know men who are out there looking crazy with their hair. Like, what are you doing? You have 3 hairs on your head. Just take them off. Stop combing them. You don't look good. Like, and it's never a question. And I feel like in the workplace in particular, there is a lot more pressure that I feel a lot of the women that I have been around and am around currently to look a particular way that I know the men that I currently work with and have worked with in the past definitely like don't feel that respective pressure to be like, I need to, like, I know men that come into work looking the same exact way every single day. Like, oh, there you go, Dr. So-and-so with your button down flannel and your khakis. And it's like, today it's blue, tomorrow will be red. And I know like Wednesdays is always yellow, but like women are literally like coming in like belts and fashion,
makeup, don't forget makeup,
and exactly, like, oh, I need to go powder my nose, I just finished having lunch. Like, no, why is there such a completely different spectrum of experience for women when it comes to how we present ourselves in the world that men just don't have?
And that's a great question, because it was something else that popped up. I had a vacancy at work at one point, and my boss asked me, hey, is there anybody, because I'm currently his only dental assistant left right now. And I'm obviously going to be going on vacation here and there. So he asked, is there anybody that wanted to do like an on-call? And the only person I knew that was out of work at the moment was Francisco. And he goes to me, he was like, oh, no. That's a guy. I need a girl. And I'm like, why? I don't get it. Like, he can answer the phone or do whatever and assist you, do it. I'll train him. He was like, no. He was like, he said it. He goes, studies show that women in the workplace put people more at ease. This is what he told me. He was like, he goes, especially in dentistry, because he only knows dentistry. He said, I need a woman or a girl or however, because, honestly, it's an attraction thing. Like, people are more attracted if there's a woman at the front desk, or if, he goes, whether it's male or female, he goes, especially male clients, they would prefer and they're much more at ease if there's a woman at a front desk or be an assistant. He goes, they get kind of like, he goes, uncomfortable if it's a male assisting or being at the front desk. And I thought that was really interesting when he told me that. But it's because of how we're seen. It's seen as men are supposed to be more masculine. They're supposed to be doing these tough jobs, like a police officer, a fireman, or like these like, and it's just crazy. And as I'm sitting at my job and I'm like, oh my God, I never realized that almost everybody I speak to on the phone in dentist place, they're all women. The only ones who are men are the doctors.
Yes. Or even thinking about it as like how people perceive power and how power is portrayed from a male perspective versus a female perspective. Like, you're as a dental assistant, you're putting stuff in people's mouths. You're in control. So a woman being in control of a male client versus a male being in control of a male client is very different. And it's like, oh, well, women are, non-threatening, and they're more, poised, and they're not going to compromise, and it's not whatever. Like, obviously you don't know me and Riza, because we're saying you in that dental chair. We don't need to be a man to do that. So but yes, it's definitely this like image of, this power that women don't have as much power or aren't viewed to have as much power. So because they're softer and more dainty, they need to be in those kinds of positions, because whether it's a woman client or a male client, there's no sense of like power struggle, I guess you could say.
And that's where we're so embedded in it that nothing ever started clicking until like I started, I guess, thinking more about this. Sometimes as you get older, you start viewing the world differently. You start being more like introspective and trying to, just, especially as I'm getting older and I'm thinking about settling down and possibly having a family in the future.
Settling down? You've been married for like 8 years.
First of all, talking about? First of all, I just introduced Daquan.
They have been together for 8 years. I don't know
what I need is starting a family, taking those next steps, because we met so young, and now that we're older, we're finally trying to build that future towards being with having kids and having our own place and stuff like that. So as I'm getting older, and this is where we're moving towards, all these things just started kind of for some reason in my brain clicking, and then I started becoming more aware of everything.
I mean, I can definitely attest to like getting older makes you more aware of things that have happened in your past, that are currently happening, that can happen, and thinking about your future and like taking those next steps, especially when you have a significant other, when you're trying to plan out your future. And planning out your future takes a lot of like 50% is me thinking about this and 50% is you thinking about this. And when kids get into the mix, you begin discussing what are things we want to instill in our kids. And there are certain things that you find yourself tolerating in life and kind of not speaking up about or recognizing in life that you want to make sure that your own kids like don't tolerate and speak up about, especially in regards to gender. I know that there were a lot of things that, you know, I kind of was brought to the light to in regards to gender and how I carried myself once I found out that I was having a daughter. And it's like, okay, well, how do I want to raise her in understanding gender roles? Like, is that something that's even a thing that I want her to look at? Because in my head and from my experience, gender is a social construct. It is something that had nothing to do with our evolution. It's nothing that really plays a role in our survival. So does me raising her through a particular lens as a woman, like, is that going to help her? Is that going to hinder her? Is it going to close her mind off for certain things? And just really asking those questions. But I think this is such a good segue, kind of like talking about, having significant others and having partners and what our role is now as the wife, the girlfriend, the woman of the relationship, and maybe not society, because I think both you and I are rebels when it comes to what society expects out of us, but what maybe our parents expect out of us or our community expects out of us when it comes to our significant others. So do you have any stories or situations that you'd like to share that has happened between you and your relationship with Daquan in the past, and, you know, even kind of thinking about the future?
Oh, yeah, of course. I have a whole bunch of those. Especially, you know, I can give you a brief one on how Daquan and I actually decided to finally move out together. So a lot of it is obviously, I don't know if you guys can tell because of how I'm speaking, but I'm Latina. I don't know if you could tell by my name or not, but
no, Riza Reyes, I couldn't.
Oh, man, tried so hard. But growing up in in a Latin households is tough. So my mom had specific rules for me. Then and my sister, because my sister went through it as well, that she did for my brothers. So this is where Daquan ties into it. So once Daquan and I started dating, mind you, I'm 21 years old. I believe he was 18, 19 at the time. And she had all these rules about how long he could stay at the house, when he had to leave, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a grown adult. Yes, I was living at her house, but it wasn't like I wasn't contributing. My little brother now is like 24 right now, 25. And his girlfriend comes over all the time, sleeps over, not a problem.
I remember the difficulties that your mom gave you, not even in the beginning of your relationship with Daquan. It was more like the middle, because you guys were dating for a while before you actually like started really bringing him over and he's hanging out and we were like doing things and stuff. So I do remember some of the conflict that came, and you're like, I'm 20 something. I'm like in my mid 20s at this point. I've been with this man for like 4 or 5 years, and you're talking to me like I'm a 12-year-old.
Exactly. And that was the point. So a lot of those, and I didn't really realize, because when we moved into Brooklyn, all these like little gender roles that my mom applied to me, I started kind of using them on him. And it was one of those where I kind of had to set, like, you know, kind of look back, because I would be at the house. Let's say I was cleaning, because we lived in Brooklyn, you know how he's scared of rodents and stuff. I was consistently cleaning. And every time my mom would call me, she would tell me, "Oh, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just cleaning the apartment," because, you know, Daquan doesn't like roaches and stuff like that. So I'm cleaning. She's like, "Oh, she goes, I am so glad." She goes, "I used to think you were going to do this. You're going to be such a good wife." And I used to just be like, "Oh," and I would tell him, because we lived in a basement. We had to do the garbage. So I used to tell him, "Okay, you're the guy, you do the garbage." And he would look at me like, "You would complain to me about everything your mom put you through because you're a woman. Now you're giving me this gender role because I'm a guy." And it was one of those things that you never really notice that you do. And you have to like kind of look back at it. And he'll be like, "No." He goes, "We'll both do it together. If you need me to clean, we'll clean." At the end of the day, he didn't really clean much though, because he's so scared of the rodents. So it ended up being me doing all the garbage and cleaning. He handled everything else. So it was one of those things that I had to kind of get out of that habit. And we've, as you said, we've been together 8 years. So we still have some of those. Well, because he's not like that. He is completely like, he does not like gender roles at all. He thinks he's the same way how you think. He goes, that's a society thing. He goes, there shouldn't be any gender attributed to anything. So him and I used to kind of bump heads on it a lot because it's how I grew up. And when you grow up in a Latin culture, you see, you know, the guy's supposed to do this with you. You're supposed to take care of the household, but he's supposed to be there financially. So it's not even just on like chores. It goes beyond on how a woman's supposed to be in a relationship. So he and I had to do a lot of growing, especially me. I had to get out of that habit, those really, really bad habits that was brought on to me, to kind of be like, okay, no, we are 50-50. So we have to kind of look at this as we're equal. Because he never treated me as anything as less than equal. But I was constantly trying to get him to be like, so kind of, I guess I was trying to get him to be like I was, you know, 60-70% when he was, you know, 40-30. Because that's how I grew up. Like, the woman in the family is the matriarch. At least in the Latino culture, women are the matriarchs. Absolutely. And women hold everything together. So I still have some of that now. I know, you know, because I try to take care of everything. And it just depends on the culture that you're coming from. Every culture has a different gender role.
Absolutely. I mean, you're first generation. I'm first generation, at least on my father's side, but I was not raised by my father or in my father's family. But I was raised by my mother's, and my mom is like fourth, fifth generation, like Italian, Puerto Rican or whatever. Like they're super Americanized. They've been here for a really long time. So they're like, I was not raised with the idea of gender roles. I was raised with like, you do everything on your own because that's just how shit gets done. So for me, I never really went into my relationships of like, well, this is who I need to be. This is what I need to get done. This is, you know, this is my duty as the woman in the relationship. And whenever I was presented those kinds of situations, I was like, what the fuck am I getting myself into? So I remember there was this one time in college, I was coming back, and an old friend of mine, we were kind of like flirting, we were kind of talking or whatever. And I was coming back, and he was like, oh, when you come back, we can hang out. And when you sleep over, you can make me a sandwich in the morning. And I was like, what? Later on, I found out that it was a joke, but me being me, I definitely did not take it as a joke. I can joke, but I can be very serious at the same time. I get offended very easily. So I was like, no, he fucking didn't. So I didn't talk to him for several months, and he's like, where'd you go? And I was like, well, this is what happened, whatever. But like, that really threw me off. It's like, how dare you, you know, view me in that way, or even make that joke, because that shit ain't even funny. And I remember, and I think my idea of like being that kind of woman of like, don't expect me to be in the back room. Don't expect me to like make food for you or whatever. I will, but it should never come from a place of obligation. Like, if I'm going to be doing stuff for you, it's because I love you. It's because I care, not because I'm a woman, not because I have a vagina, not because of what chromosomes I have, whatever it may be. And I remember like growing up and my mom telling me the story of like when she used to go up to my father's house when they were like dating and first got married or whatever. So my father's Dominican, just to preface, the women would be like in the back room drinking beer, and all of the men would be outside, like drinking the hard liquor, like having a good time. And my mom was like, no, I'm not doing that. So she was outside with the men having the hard liquor, because I don't want no fucking beer. Like, I don't want to be in the back room. I'm here with my significant other, and he's out here, so I'm gonna be out here. So that understanding and her playing that role in any relationship that I've seen her in is what my understanding was. And I remember the first time that I went to my significant other, Joshua's mom's house, and we decided to cook together. I love cooking. It was like a great time. It was a great bonding experience. When the food was finally done, we're placing it on the table, and she's like, okay, well, you can serve him. And without even thinking, I spit out, well, he has hands, and I sat down. And I remember in that moment, not feeling guilty that I wouldn't serve him, but feeling bad because I knew that she was, you know, she's Guatemalan. She is like more old fashioned. She's Christian or whatever. And this is like my first impression.
That was the first time you met her?
It wasn't the first time that I met her, but it was the first time that I was in her house. I was cooking with her, and I straight up like told her in her face that her eldest son has hands, and sat down, and I was like, he could serve himself. And he laughed because he knew how nervous I was, because I knew I was walking into a more conservative household. It was more old fashioned, like Latino and all that other stuff. And that isn't how I was raised. I am aware of it. All my friends are from those kinds of households, but it's not something that I am comfortable practicing because it is against everything that I believe. So being put in that position, it was second nature for me to be like, no, he has hands. He can serve himself. I'm not serving him. I'll serve him if I want to, not because I'm obligated. So for him, he was like, thank you for being your natural self. But for me, I was like, shit, like she's gonna hate me because I'm the woman that you can bring home to your mom until you actually bring me home to your mom. So it's that kind of situation. But after that, like I kind of just got over it because it's like, I'm not gonna fake who I'm going to be as a partner to your son, because that's just not the life that we live. And, you know, it's taken me a really long time to accept her outlook on like what our relationship is supposed to be. Like, there's been times where she, you know, kind of emphasized like, you know, Joshua, you're the protector and you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do this for her. And she does this or whatever. And I'm like, we don't do that. Like what you said, kind of like with Daquan, him and I are on the same wavelength and of being raised in like everything is 50-50. Like whether you wash a dish or I wash a dish, it's not a man's role. It's not a woman's role. It's just, we need to get this shit done. So for me, it's like, well, why can't we both be the protectors? Why can't we both be the providers? Because that's just who we are as human beings. We're here to support each other, not you have to do this because this is what is dangling or not dangling.
I completely agree. And it's hilarious that you said that. And that was my reaction because I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like that's my whole family. Anytime, you know, the couple times Daquan came to Christmas, our family, it was like the first time he came was when we first started dating, and everybody was just like, oh, go make him a plate. You know what he likes. And it's stuff like that. Like, oh, go. And I would, it's so normalized that you don't even think twice about it. So I know he came to the, right before COVID happened. We had Christmas at my uncle's house. So he came to that one, and you know, I was sitting down and then I told him, I was like, hey, I know you don't want to go in the kitchen because he doesn't really know that side of my family that well. So to make him less uncomfortable, I was just like, is there anything on this table? Because we all, you know, said grace at the table. My family's super Catholic. And he was just like, okay, he goes, just bring me a little bit of everything. And I was like, okay, so go sit down and I'll bring it to you. That's the only time I've actually ever been like, okay, let me serve you something, because I know you're already a little nervous and a little uncomfortable. Yes, we've been dating for so long, but we don't consistently get together with our entire family like that. So, so I can already imagine that him having to sit there and pray over some food is already, you know, taking a lot out of it.
Exactly, to the point that you're saying, like in that moment, you were doing it, you wanted to do it. It was something that you were like, I understand that my partner is very uncomfortable in this environment right now because this is not how he was raised and this isn't necessarily what he believes in or practices or whatever. So let me do what I can to make him more comfortable so we can enjoy our time here.
It's interesting because Daquan and I were actually having this conversation yesterday. He's more terrified of having a daughter. I was like, I think we'll be great parents to daughters. I was like, especially you would be, you know, the type of dad that wouldn't promote those gender roles on her because that's not who he is. And he was just like, he's like, no, I would be a great father and I would, you know, teach. He goes, I would treat my daughter the same way I would treat my son. He goes, but then I still kind of can't. And then I told him to elaborate. And he was like, I can't treat her almost equally the same. He goes, I can love them the same. He was like, because when my son goes into the world, he goes, he gets treated completely different than when my daughter goes into the world. He was like, there's a lot of sickos. He goes, when my daughter goes into the world, I gotta worry about having her protected, meaning she needs to know how to defend herself. She needs to have mace. She needs to have a taser. She needs to have something because her walking down the street could potentially put her in danger. And, you know, it's one of those things that us as women, yes, we know this. We deal with it consistently.
Yeah.
You know, and we deal with the catcalling. Right. We deal with just how we're looked at. We can't wear anything that shows a little bit of skin.
You can wear a trash bag and there's still some man being like,
exactly. And it's like, one of those things. And my life is in danger on a daily basis because I leave my house and because I'm a woman, and basically. You're a woman. So that's how he's looking at it. So I remember, you know, even when him and I, you know, moved out together and stuff like that, he would constantly tell me, when you get off the train to walk home, you need to be on the phone with me, because he was so worried anything can happen to me between the 3 blocks between the train and my house and my home. And he's so absolutely right. So much could. And we hear all these horror stories. And he goes, I'm not worried about us. He goes, it's the world. He goes, until the world finally starts being so sick. And he says, and all these, he goes, it's societal. He goes, society is the one that puts these gender norms and roles. And he goes, I understand the societal gender roles and norms. I understand what they are. He goes, but they're not right. So he's saying, I can see what they did. He goes, that doesn't mean that they're right. And he goes, and me understanding the societal roles makes me that much more protective of a daughter than I would of a son. And he goes, but then I have the double-edged sword where my son is black. So exactly. And then now I'm going to have a daughter who's a black woman. So I was just like, so that was just so, I don't know. Him and I have been like getting into a lot of these conversations. This was legit like a 30-minute conversation where I took him to work yesterday. Him and I in the car. So it's just a lot of these things. And we don't realize how everything is so interconnected. You know, us being catcalled and us being women go translate to our relationships, whether it's our significant others, our friendships, with our parents, with anyone else, and even strangers. So all of this is so interconnected that it's one of those things where some days you don't even know how to explain it or how to live with it or how to live by it.
Yeah, right. It's because it's something that's so second nature. You can almost put no words to it because it's so ingrained. It's like, well, what do I need to describe to you? It's like right there in your face. But, you know, for someone who doesn't deal with that, it isn't there in their face. Like, I remember my grandmother teaching me at a really young age to, like, when I'm walking around in New York City, to always look like I'm mad. Like, people would always, like, make comments to her when she was walking around, like, oh, like, you know, the coin term, you should smile. Like, why are you having a bad day? All this other stuff. And it's like, I need to look like I'm ready to kill you and your whole family. So you don't talk to me. So you don't look at me. So you don't bother me. So you don't think that I'm approachable, because guess what? I'm not. And I know, like, that conversation that you had with Daquan would literally break me out into anxiety attacks when I was pregnant, Riza. Like, thinking about, like, first of all, I was so excited that I was having a daughter, and a lot of that was attributed to the fact of, like, the kind of relationship that I have with my mom and being able to, like, recreate that and enhance that with my own daughter. Not that it wouldn't be, you know, any different with a son or whatever, but it was a special moment. But anyway, the thought of, like, well, shit, she's a female, whether or not she wants to identify as a woman or not, at the end of the day, you know, her being a female puts her in this position of danger every single day, every time she steps out of the house, like you just said. And just, like, the thought of everything that could happen to her. I mean, I've had my own sexual assault experiences. I know tons of people who have gone through it as well. And now I'm bringing somebody into this world that has a higher percentage of being in the same position that myself and all of these other people that I know have been in. I was taught at a very young age to protect myself. I did martial arts, and my mom and my grandmother and my aunt were very open about, like, this is what a rapist is. This is what a pervert is. Like, this is, you know, you don't go into somebody else's car, like, stranger danger, all this other stuff. So I was very aware. I knew what to look out for. And I was still molested. So it's like, you know, I was given the vocabulary. I was given the tools to understand and to watch out and to defend myself. So for me as a mom, it's like, well, I can teach her everything she needs to know, but that doesn't mean that, you know, the world is going to care about her having those tools. Like, the thought of not being able to protect her all the time is scary, but I also don't want to be that overbearing helicopter mom, because that's not who I am. That's not who my mom was. So I understand that added layer of stress that you and Daquan are now discussing, because that's something that I have gone through, that I'm going through, and I'm trying to figure out. I know that I brought this up to my close friends, like right before I gave birth. And her advice to me was to make everyone a part of the conversation about not sexualizing Cecilia. And like, whatever situation you're in, it's like, we're not going to sexualize my daughter. We're not going to touch her. If she doesn't want to hug you, she don't want to kiss you, you respect that, because she has the right to consent, whether she is 1 month old or 21 years old. And making sure that me and Joshua create boundaries for her before she's able to vocalize her own boundaries for herself. So that's something that I know that him and I are trying to practice. Hopefully that is a tool that will lower her percentage in being in those kinds of compromising situations that lead to sexual assault and sexual violence. But it is something that you have to fear as a parent.
Absolutely. And that's honestly the best way to explain it, which is where I was telling Daquan, where I thought my mom was so strict on me, but I kind of get where she was coming from on giving me those really early curfews, or me not being out too late, or I can't really go partying here and there, because all she sees, someone who's older, like all you watch is the news, and watching the news is nothing but bad news. There's no good news watching the news. Did I think it was fair? No. Us as women, we can show skin. We can choose not to. We can choose this. As long as we stay virginal, then apparently society's okay with it. So if we decide to tell people, well, no, I like to have sex. Sex is great. Sex is enjoyable. It's meant for both men and women. We're slut shamed. We're promiscuous. We're this, we're that. So I was like, no, I don't know how we can protect a future daughter, or even Cecilia. I know you can instill all of that, but I don't know how we can protect her from the world sexualizing her anyway. And that's the problem.
Exactly, because it's like, you want to be sexually liberated. You want to teach your daughter to be sexually liberated. But at the same time, it's like, there are people who take your sexual liberation as an invitation to sexualize you. And the thing is that sex in society has been used more as a sense of power, of like, I have power over you through this very vulnerable emotional act, rather than everything else sex really is. Sex is used in marketing. It uses to sell. It's used more as a tool to have advantage over somebody else. And for some people, that's a kink. That's totally fine. We're cool with that. But there's a fine line where, that kink is no longer a consensual kink. And it's like, okay, how do we communicate those lines, and where are we able to draw them, and how do we make sense of them, and how do we, get someone to understand I'm saying no, and I actually mean it. Like, this isn't me like trying to play hard to get. Like, this isn't like a game at this point in time. What needs to be done to show like this is the side that I'm trying to stay away from, in like being sexualized in a negative way, versus the side of like, this is my sexual liberation. I have no problem posting a picture naked on social media, or like having dildos and all this other stuff, whatever it may be. I think our society just needs to have conversations about sex, because like sex is normal, like you said, it's not taboo. People fucking do it. How the fuck you got here? Like, what are we talking about here? So like, sex is normal. Let's normalize it. And I think once we normalize it, we'll be better able to communicate ourselves out of this like fine line of, this is the bad and this is the good when it comes to like sexualization. Absolutely. And sexuality.
Like, and if you normalize it, even like how we're going back to like, let's say kids are going to think, a lot of kids when they grow up, and especially with molestation, assume that everything is all bad, that every type of touch is bad. You can't do this. Well, this is why this happened to me, because I did this and that was bad. So like even when you talk, I guess I'm talking about masturbation in a way. That's one point. So like, parents used to tell their kids, oh no, you're not supposed to touch yourself there. That's bad. Sometimes some kids, when they do get molested, they say, well, this is happening because I did something bad. So if you're talking to kids, it's okay to tell them you're just exploring, it's okay and stuff like that, and let them know. And then as they're getting older, let them know that it's supposed to be something that it's enjoyable for both parties, for both partners, whether it's male, female, female, male, male, however you want to do it. But also then it's more of also then being safe and then teaching them the boundaries. I guess that's what it is, between what you like, what you don't like, and what another person should be able to do to you.
Right. And knowing that it's okay to communicate that. I think people kind of go into it and be like, oh, well, this is going to make it awkward, or this is going to kill the mood. Like, fuck the mood. Like, you'll get back into the mood if you want to. But being able to clearly say, like, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And that's when you're actually really able to enjoy it, because there isn't something that is going to trigger you to get upset, to get mad, to be uncomfortable, to no longer enjoy it. There's so many different layers to it, but communication is definitely key when going in and enjoying sex with your partners, sexual acts towards yourself. I think it's important for people to explore pleasure, like sexual pleasure, on their own first. Absolutely. In order to figure out what they like and what they're looking for when they do engage in those acts.
Absolutely. And then not being afraid to talk to your kids about it, because the more you say no, like, oh, you're too young for this, you're not going to know this, you're going to find out a different way. And it's not going to be the way you should find out. My brother's, I guess, sex talk was, use protection, don't get her pregnant. Like, that's legit. That was basically the sex talk. My sex talk was, you're not allowed to have sex until you're married. That was my sex talk. Right. I never even got the, your period talk either. I found out I got my period when I got my period. Geez. And then all of a sudden I was told I was a woman. I was like, I wasn't a woman before. Like, it was one of those things. Like, I never really got that talk. I remember in middle school, we got the sex ed. I was like 13 talk, but I already had started my period the year before. So I figured out what it was. I remember being made fun of in sixth grade because all the girls were getting their period by this one kid, because I never got it. And, I was a tomboy and I loved sports, and I was always around the guys. So they would make fun of me saying, hey, are you even a girl? You're a guy because you haven't even gotten your period yet. I would have taken offense to it if I would have known what a period was. I just looked at my friend like, Lily, I just looked at Lily like, what's a period? Like, not knowing what it was. And Lily, being developed earlier, was just like, she was like, oh, no one told you what it was? And then her and I had to have a chat. So it's a lot of that.
But you're 12 years old having a chat with another 12-year-old about your menstrual cycle. Yes. And it's so crazy because, like, I mean, my mom had all those conversations with me. My mom literally, like, handed me books at, like, 7 years old when I was like, what are they talking about on this TV show? And she was like, all right, read this. If you have any questions, let me know. And she's always been very open about this kind of stuff. And, like, whenever she went to the bathroom, I was in the bathroom with her. So I know what a period was. I knew what a pad was, tampon was, whatever. But because we're women, and things like periods and us having sex and, like, us maintaining the sense of purity and virginity and all this other stuff, there are so many things that women do not know about their own bodies and what it does. Men definitely don't know it, but women really, 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 really don't know it. And I learned more about my female anatomy once I was pregnant. And I, like, my midwife and some of the physical therapy that I had to do after having Cecilia really brought to light all of these things that I didn't know that a woman body had, a female's body could do, all of this other stuff. And it was so mind opening, but also, like, sad, because it's like, I'm teaching my mom about her body, and she's like, I didn't even know that it can happen that way, or, like, it did that or anything. And I was just like, why don't we know this? Like, why isn't this a conversation that women are allowed to have? Like, why? And it comes to looking at history and looking at society and how society was created and gender roles were created. Women were we're put in the situation purposely to not be educated and to not know anything about anything, because it would take power away from the men. And that still permeates society now, because we're females and we don't even know about our damn female body and what it does. Like, that's absolutely crazy. So I tried really hard to kind of like learn more about all of these things that I didn't know that a female's body could do, in order to have those conversations and be like, hey, Cecilia, like, did you know, like, it's more than just a vagina, and it does all these different kinds of things, and like, your vagina is for more than just sex, because that's essentially what we're taught. Like, you have a vagina, it is just a sexual organ, and it's meant to be pleasured. And it's like, well, actually, no, there's a lot more complexity to it. Like, it's yours, and here's
it's funny
all of
that
the
you say
magic
that that's what they teach us, is like meant to be pleasured. But there's some people who don't like that type of pleasure that way. People don't get off on penetration. Yes. So some people like more like clitoral pleasure. So it's one of those things where it's just like, it's so, it's honestly what you said. It is power basically towards a male dominated society.
Porn's a lie. Like, if there are any people who are out there who have not had sex yet and are looking at porn to learn about sex, you are looking at the wrong fucking place. Because like what you just said, like, I'm definitely one of those people that I like penetration. Yeah, it's fun, but it doesn't really do anything for me. And it's whatever. But not everybody understands that. And it took me to learn about my body through outside sources, essentially, to understand that was something that was normal, really
super normal,
actually. And everything in media, everything in, porn media and sex media makes it seem like sex and female pleasure is supposed to be this one particular thing. And it really isn't. Like, our pleasure is a lot more complex than what they make it seem. And then we get stuck with these men who are just kind of like this one trick pony, and they think that if I just do 1, 2, and 3, you're set. And it's like, no, honey, like, there's a lot more that we need to like make happen in order for me to really enjoy this. Like, I can blow on your penis and you're set.
It's learning, honestly, what you said is the female anatomy and the male anatomy, because it's so completely different. And it is just taught like to us that this is there for us to have babies. And not even the pleasure. It's not even a pleasure. They didn't teach us there was a pleasure box. They taught us this is the place where babies come out of, and then we're just going to insert something here while you were someone else so you can have babies. You're only here to have babies. So that's basically what they told us the vagina was made for babies.
I knew it as the pleasure box and the baby box, but I definitely know a lot of people who just know it as the baby box. And there are tons of fucking females that are out there that don't even want to have babies, that can't have babies. Like, vagina does not equal babies. Vagina does not equal sex. Like, learn about your body as a female, understand everything that it does beyond procreation and sex, because it is so much more than that.
I wholeheartedly agree. But I think what I want the audience to take home from this is on us just trying to constantly each day just be a better person than who we are. And we're trying to constantly just break some of these gender norms, because it's honestly not fair. And for us to kind of, I guess, move on in society, we're the ones, if you want to have kids, if you don't, however you are, we need to find a way to kind of keep pushing forward for the next generation, because, we're making some changes, slowly but surely, but there's just a lot. And these conversations is honestly, I think, the first step. This is something that we need to have with each other, with whoever, if it's your parent, especially, honestly, that whole generational gap. I think these conversations are important. A friend or whoever, and someone, a lot of the times you need to have these conversations with someone who doesn't see it from your side. And it's not to convince them. You're not trying to convince somebody to come to your side. You're just trying to have this open conversation so you guys can see each other's points. And hopefully that can move this conversation forward.
You are now listening to You Heard.